Unfortunate, Madam Speaker, how government failed on two counts. First, they failed to prove how legislation is the correct way forward, Madam Chair, to correct what we call perceived errors on the ground. And second, they failed to show us why the only way to go is the introduction of a muscular and active government intervention. The first idea, they think that legislation is the correct way to correct a perceived ill, as if the US and other progressive first world countries cannot change organically on their own. The first problem then with opening government is their inability to spell out what actively undermining means, what forms it will be delivered in, Madam Speaker, and what reactions to be expected on the ground. Because implicitly what that translates to would be letter A, Bush-style intervention over all school board decisions, and letter B, a complete overhaul of the curriculum without consultation, especially when you have pockets of conservatives all over America, as if the state has already made its mind and no one else could correct or change its position on that particular issue. We say, Madam Speaker, that changes must reflect collectively the values of a community, a county, and a state. What the government wants in this debate is to replace the entirety of the United States of America with New York's liberal position on issues. This, we see from closing opposition, is a brazen blanket policy that maligns the very diversity that first world countries are very proud of. Sit down, please. This is a brazen assault on rights of individuals, of parents to decide on the policies and direction of school boards. This is a brazen instrument which will not bring about change that is acceptable for all. In fact, check your status quo in the US, you have a country torn between the Tea Party conservatives and Occupy protest liberals. It's a shame that government assumes that America is a monolithic thinking bloc. That's not reality on the ground. All their arguments therefore have just collapsed. The second failure of opening government, Madam Speaker, in the process closing government, is the failure to recognize what actively undermining translates to. We say that we don't want the state to flex its muscles in this case. Why? Because check status quo and all their propositions and dreams in life are actually already happening. Girls can now play as rock stars in school plays. Boys are now allowed to take cooking classes. Boys and girls can now co-organize events, Madam Speaker. A woman could be president, a high school student council president. In fact, you even have gay couples attending proms. Don't you watch Glee? We say that you don't need legislation, Madam Speaker, rather, to change society. That can happen organically without the introduction of such punitive measures, Madam Speaker. It's as if they want the state to be the substitute brain for the entirety of America. That shouldn't happen. It maligns the very diversity we're very proud of. In fact, you can't even decide as of the moment whether to teach evolution or creationism in US schools. What more for closer topics to the heart such as gender, the role, the limits between girls and boys. It's a very sensitive topic. If you can't settle topics which are far off, what more for those which are quite sensitive? In this debate, I'll prove two things. That number one, there is no need for active intervention, that organic changes will happen, and that they're the best way forward. And number two, I'll talk about what is the better philosophy of education for America to move it forward, Madam Speaker, to the future. We say, please relax, sit down, Giano. Change happens organically. That's the best way forward, we say. Community effort is the best way to go, especially in first world countries where individuals could galvanize support and they could form a bloc to make sure that school boards listen to them, Madam Speaker. And the discussion in this debate is a contested value. Fine, gender issues is something popular right now. It's something acceptable for certain people, Madam Speaker. And we laud feminist ideas which promote these particular values of men and women being equal to each other. Then again, it shouldn't be allowed to substitute all other schools of thought in upbringing. You have Protestants who subscribe to biblical teachings, Madam Speaker, who are in the process very conservative. You have individuals, you have Amish families who subscribe to the isolation of oneself from the material outside world. You have individuals, migrants to America from the Middle East, who attend madrasa schools who believe that boys and girls, while equally important, have separate roles, limits, and destinies. Therefore, the best way forward is not to subvert the curriculum, impose change change right there and then,
Sir.
as if they would just accept it without any form of resistance, creating the school, turning schools into a battleground. That's something we don't want. It's unfair for the students. They're not gonna learn. Changes will happen organically. What they're trying to do is dangerous. It's Taliban-style leadership intervention in a society as diverse as America and the rest of Europe. If abuse happens, and that's their main fear, then fine. Raise it to the school board. Form a block. It's America to begin with, not the Philippines where no one listens to you. Fine, if the school board doesn't listen to you, invoke the anti-discrimination law. That's exactly what the prom was for. Then again, Madam Speaker, in the process, that's the only way you change America organically, to allow states to make decisions for themselves and not make the state the substitute brain for everyone else. Yan, my friend.
How can neutrality ever happen on your side if everything else falls into place because the school confirms with your conservatism?
Listen, Diano, if the schools in the process are a reflection of the values in that community, and that's not necessarily bad. Just because it's a Protestant community and you don't agree with Protestantism doesn't mean that you have to impose New York's liberal values to that particular community. Isn't that what pluralistic democracy is all about? That's my second argument will argue that the correct philosophy of education for America is one that allows diversity to prosper and empower individuals, Madam Speaker, to make decisions for themselves. We say that in those formative years, grade school and high school, you allow the education of the basics to prosper and not turn your grade school experience into a battleground between the liberals and the conservatives. We want to spare the students from the drama of such event, Madam Speaker. There is always an alternative route whenever you feel passionate about wearing pink, even if you're a boy, or you want to go out in a prom event with a man, even if you're already a gentleman. We say, Madam Speaker, there are already pockets of changes. There is already a way forward, but state intervention is dangerous, Madam Speaker, because it assumes that there is only one way to think in an America which is not monolithic. The strength of education, therefore, emanates from the ability of individuals to own that education system, to develop it, and call it, Madam Speaker, a product of your culture and not just one state in America. Pockets of changes can happen, should emanate from the strength of individuals to direct the course and future of America, and not the state making decisions blanketly without consultation on individuals on the ground. They are giving us steps backward, Madam Speaker. This is the only acceptable direction forward. Make government win in this debate, and you send a message that all other schools of thought are unacceptable. Make government win in this debate, Madam Speaker. You don't challenge people to think anymore, make decisions, rally, because the state has become the substitute brain for everyone in America and the rest of Europe. Thank you for listening.